Do my best Cody Rhodes. Sacramento. I have to do the lips. Oh. The lisp. Sacramento, California. What do you want to talk about?
That is pretty good. Oh my god, I love that.
Oh, this is exclusively a wrestling podcast.
This now has become exclusively a wrestling podcast. And we kind of talk about the movie.
Honestly, if we did a wrestling podcast spinoff, it would just be us, like, screaming the whole time. We'd be like, it was sick! He did the thing!
So good!
Oh my god.
It'd be that and us simping for Dom.
I know, me just constantly yelling, he's just a little boy.
He is.
He's so little.
He's just a little guy.
Little guy.
So what do you want to talk about?
That's just our new intro. Hello.
And welcome.
We're doing it again where we do like
break
one.
It's
like
4 parts instead of 2 parts.
One of those like acting exercises.
You have to say every other word.
Hello and welcome to Okay But Listen,
a review podcast.
I'm Kaitlyn.
And I'm Juliana, and we fucking nailed it.
Yeah, baby. The bar is so low.
I'm still sick.
Yeah.
And we watched Joe and the Volcano this week.
Joe versus the Volcano.
Joe versus the Volcano.
Joe and the Volcano is a very different movie.
Oh, is it?
No. It doesn't exist.
I don't know these things, Kaitlyn. I have no idea.
Oh my god, it's like, that sounds like it would be like a buddy cop movie. Joe and the Volcano. They're two renegade cops.
It's like a volcano in like a cop suit, just like running around. He's steaming mad.
Shut the fuck up. We gotta write this now. TM. We're writing this script.
This is gonna be the dumbest script.
Stupid. Yeah, so we watched Joe versus the Volcano. It's from 1990, featuring Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan.
Super young Tom Hanks.
Super, with his little, like, 90s mullet thing that he has. Is this, like,
one of his first, like, movie roles?
No, so he was coming off of, this is, like, right after he did Big and Turner and Hooch. So it's, like, 1990, very early Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
But it's not, like, his first role.
Man, I thought he was younger in those. That's crazy.
So the plot of this movie, it starts with Joe Banks. The opening sequence is so good. It's got that version of like that song 16 Tons as they all like trudge up the path to the factory and
that
his
looks like a face.
Yeah,
looks
and
like a skull almost.
His like shitty office in like the basement of the factory. But it starts with Joe. He's, like, regular guy. He works this really shitty job in this really shitty office. He's a hypochondriac. Mm-hmm. He goes to the doctor, and his doctor tells him that he has a brain cloud, and he has, like, 5 or 6 months to live. So he quits his job in, like, it's the way that everyone wants to quit their job, where they get up and he's like, fuck you, and fuck this job, and this place sucks.
Yep.
And then he's approached by this, like, rich dude who gets Joe because he wants the mineral rights for this island that's like this very rare mineral. And in order to get the rights, he needs somebody to jump into the volcano to appease their gods. So then that's like his thing is Joe goes on this little adventure to like kill himself by jumping into a volcano. Mm-hmm. He realizes things about his life along the way, and he finds love. And he
finds fulfillment.
Yeah, he finds fulfillment. He, like, finds himself.
Yeah.
And then he gets married and goes to jump into the volcano, and then it yeets them out of the volcano. Which was such a twist to me. It was, like, such a twist. And then, like, the whole island just sinks into the ocean.
Yeah! What happened to the fucking people? That it happened, I was like, but there's a whole culture here. Where are they?
Well, they had, like, boats and stuff, because they went out in the boats to save them, so maybe they lived.
They were at the top of the volcano.
True.
I don't know. I was like, we didn't even see one single survivor. That made me sad.
They outsourced their sacrifice to their god. They were like, well, none of us want to do it. They even have the, like, final chance where he's like, does anybody want to do it? And nobody raises their hand. So Joe is like, okay, I'll go do it.
Okay, I guess it's fine.
You had never seen this movie.
I've never seen it. I hadn't really heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
Before. You told me about it when I was talking about office jobs once.
Yeah.
I said, I think getting an office job feels like a cheese grater on my soul. And you said, you gotta watch this movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was the first I heard about it. And then I watched it.
I watched this a lot. This is honestly one of my favorite movies. I really like it. It has kind of, a lot of the stuff I looked up kind of called it like a fairy tale. And it kind of has that vibe where it's not really a comedy.
No.
Like, and it's not really a drama, but it's like, it feels kind of like a fairy tale where he's like given his quest and he like goes on the quest and finds himself along the way.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing that I was surprised about the movie was how stylized it was.
This movie is gorgeous, and so
Yeah.
I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say in general. I like made an outline of like my notes and my research, and like halfway through I was like, I could write a paper about this. This movie is super stylized. It's really gorgeous. It was intentional, like very intentional, down to the part where like the writer and director, John Patrick Shanley, had storyboards and would go to the like DP before shooting and be like, this is what it's gonna look like. Like they did so much like pre-production, literally 5 months of pre-production, and 90% of that was in the art department designing like scene after scene, shot after shot. Like he wanted it to look a very specific way. And he worked really hard to get it to look a specific way.
That's really cool that they work so closely with the art department. It definitely shows.
Yeah. One of the things that, like, I love the most is there are themes and there are motifs and there is symbolism. The symbolism drives me fucking insane in, like, the best way because, like, so there's the volcano motif. Mm-hmm. And it's that zigzag pattern. It carries through the entire film. I never picked it up until I was reading about it and I went back, but it's the company logo, the path up to the factory. It's Joe has a crack in the wall in his apartment. Yeah. That's that same shape, that same symbol. It's the lightning that hits the boat. And it's the path up to the volcano itself is this very specific, very intentional, like, zigzag lightning pattern. Dang. And it carries through the whole film. And, like, that's the kind of thing where, like, Shanley knew what he wanted this to look like. Yeah. And he carried it through the entire way.
That's incredible.
Right? Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know. What was your read? What was your take? Like,
I really liked this movie. Again, I was thrown by, like, how stylized it was. Because I don't know. I don't know what I was anticipating. But I didn't think it was going to be so artsy. Because it feels like this, like, very artsy kind of independent film. It's one of those ones where, like, you got to watch it all the way through to, like, see it all. And then watch it again to be like, okay, I'm connecting the dots. Yeah. Because, like, the first time, it's just like, this is beautiful. And it's, like, a weird fever dream of a ride. Mm-hmm. And then it ends and you're like, okay, I think I get it. And so, like, you want to watch it again to see all those, like, repeating motifs now that you've seen the whole thing. There's lots of things where I was like, I wanted to watch it again. Yeah. To get more out of it.
Well, and we've talked about this with other movies on the podcast, but, like, I think one of the signs of a really good movie is rewatchability. In that, like, every time you watch it, you pick up something new. And I feel like this one is really good because, again, like, I've been watching this movie, like, off and on since I was, like, maybe 13.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, it's one of those where every time I go back, I pick up something new. Like, it's embarrassing how many watches it took me before I realized that Meg Ryan plays all three of the female characters.
Well, you were 13.
Yeah, that's true. One of those movies where, like, every time you watch it, it looks like you pick up something new and you, like, notice things deeper.
I also feel like it's one of those movies that, depending on where you are in your life and you watch it, you will get something different.
Oh, yeah, this hit a lot harder now that I've worked office jobs. Yeah. It sucks. Fun fact, the office that Joe works in is an exact replica of the office that the director worked in. Because it's inspired by, like, this awful job that he had. And he quit the job after a while and was, like, kind of getting into more stuff, wanted to get into, like, art and stuff. This was, like, his first job. What is his role? He's, like, the advertising clerk where he just, like, gets
He puts the ads, he sends the ads to magazines.
He just has, like, no drive, and he feels terrible. Like, he just feels awful the whole time. He's a hypochondriac.
Oh, yeah. The physical
great.
manifestation of just the feeling shitty at an office job.
Well, and then, so a really good quote from Shanley, because he's talking about he worked a lot of, like, lousy jobs growing up. And he says, "It's a movie about what I saw and what I felt around me and what I found attractive and interesting to depict on screen." And so he just, like, was taking these ugly, awful things and being like, well, how can I make this interesting? How can I, like, show this?
This was really interesting on the, like, heels of Idiocracy.
Mm-hmm.
So Idiocracy and Mike Judge's thing about, like, doing that with his awful office job created Office Space.
Yeah.
In a different way. And then, what's this writer's name?
John Patrick Shanley.
Shanley was like, this is my awful office job, and this is his interpretation of art.
Yeah.
Being in a terrible office. It's the two cakes.
Yeah.
Everybody hates being in an office, and they get to write a story about it, and they all are very different from each other.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's bringing back Idiocracy and Office Space too, where it was hard for Office Space to, like, get off the ground because people in Hollywood hadn't worked office jobs. It wasn't relatable to them.
Yeah.
And Shanley actually had a little bit of trouble, like, getting this movie kind of going. The wild thing, so we're just getting into, like, the production a little bit.
Okay, a little bit.
Well, no. Okay, let's talk more about the rest of it, because I could go on, like, into that for a while.
Like, okay, let's just talk about the office scenes in the beginning half of the office, because, like, I loved that conversation where the boss comes in and is like, what do you mean you don't have any, like, whatevers to send to wherever? And he's like, well, I told you 3 weeks ago that we were running low, and then I told you 2 weeks ago that we were out. And he's like, well, did you tell me last week? He's like, no, because I've told you the other 2 weeks. He's like, well, it's your fault that you didn't tell me last week. And it's like, I've had that conversation where it's like, I warned you a month in advance, and then I warned you, and then I just figured you knew.
Yeah.
Fuck me, I guess, for not reminding you.
Yeah.
Even though I did remind. How is this my fault that you failed at your job?
Well, and I love they have the same. He has the same conversation on the phone, like, every single day. Like, Joe goes in, and his boss is on the phone, and he's like, I'm not arguing with that with you. I'm not arguing that with you. Well, if I said I didn't say that. Well, if I did say it, then I was wrong, but I wasn't wrong. I'm not arguing. Like, that's the only lines he has constantly.
Circular arguments. He has 2 conversations on the phone, and both of them consist of 2 lines, I think. And he's just saying them differently. Yeah. I was like, that's kind of a fun acting challenge.
So, actually, that's something that Tom Hanks talked about, is this role was kind of harder. He's coming off of playing the guy in Big. And Tom Hanks in general kind of starts very large and very, like, his acting is, he starts kind of at an 8 and then goes up to a 10 occasionally. And he was talking in an interview about how this role was harder to play because instead of starting out big, he had to reel it in a lot. And so he found himself having to reel it in. And he doesn't have, like, a lot of dialogue until kind of the last half. And he was saying, like, even when Joe is saying, like, I don't know, I don't feel good, each one comes with, like, a different level of, like, connotation and thought. Because he's not, like, monotone the whole time. Like, he's communicating something with the same words. Like, he's just saying, like, I don't feel good. I don't feel good. Yeah. And, like, having to say it over and over.
I could see that, too, of, like, probably the frustration that Tom Hanks felt of not being able to act at his normal 8. And, like, having to be quiet and put that into his lines. Yeah. Because you kind of felt this underlying frustration from Joe when he's in the office.
Oh, yeah.
Of just, like, how much he absolutely hated being there.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, it gives off the vibe of, like, he is stuck in a rut. Like, they all walk up the same path every day. The coat hanger in the office where he just keeps trying to hang up his hat and every single hook just is broken. Yeah. And the coffee is, like, sludge. Ugh. And his, like, little bit, the thing that gets me is, like, his little bit of happiness, and it's that thing where, this is my opinion, and this is terrible, but you can tell someone's commitment to an office job based on looking at their desk or their cubicle space.
Yep.
And so, like, his is bare. You notice, like, his boss has, like...
one trophy.
The trophy and the thing, and, like, it's kind of neat, but not super neat. And then Dee Dee has, like, little bits of stuff. Like, it's kind of cluttered, but it feels, like, comfy cluttered. Like, she doesn't seem miserable at the job. She's just kind of like, oh, well, I'm working this job.
She's there to chew gum and type reports.
Yeah.
Very loudly.
Meanwhile, Joe has his little drawer with his secret, like, he has that lamp. That lamp is so cool. It, like, makes noise, and it's got the hula girl and the, like,
and the tropical
thing,
seas around it.
So cute. But the boss comes in and, like, tells him to get rid of it. He's like, that can't be here. You have to be professional. Like, his one little bright thing, he's just like, you can't have that.
The other thing, too, about that office is that it doesn't have any natural light.
It's all fluorescent. It's like, in the basement.
It's in the basement, so there's, like, no light. And I don't know if you've worked in an office where you've had no natural light, but it's
oh, yeah. No,
miserable.
I worked in the vault at Loomis,
yeah.
processing the, like, cash deposits. And literally, like, it was all fluorescent lights. They cleaned the ventilation system while I was there, and someone had commented that that was the first time the vents had been cleaned out in, like, 6 months. I was sick all the time because you're dealing with money, which is gross already, and then, like, there's no ventilation because you're literally in a fucking vault.
Yeah.
Standing all day.
With no natural light.
Yeah, and it's miserable. I was sick all the time when I worked at that job. And you just don't have any natural light, and you're like, well, I guess I'm gonna fucking die.
Like, I guess this is it. It feels like, honestly, when there's, like, no light, it feels like a way to beat you into submission. Because they're like, if you work here long enough, we'll give you a window. Yeah. And you're like, I need it.
The concept of, like, the corner office being, like, that's how you know you've made it, is you get the corner office, because you get 2 windows.
Which is, like, so shitty, man.
So awful.
It feels like, oh my god, I knew somebody who worked at... So, because I went to school at Merced, it's, like, the headquarters for foster farms. And foster farms was really secretive. So, people who had, like, internships in theirs, I believe they had to sign, like, NDAs and stuff. Like, they weren't really allowed to talk about what they saw in the factories.
That's terrifying.
And, yeah, it is terrifying. But one of the lady, like, one of my friends I was talking to who had an internship there, she was saying that they had put in, because it was around the time that, like, free range stuff was becoming big, and they had put in a window because the regulations just was like, there needs to be a window for the chicken. There's two different levels. One's like a window for the chickens to see out, and then one's a door. And so they had put in a window to see how that went, and the chickens stampeded each other and would kill other chickens to get to the window, to the point that they had to remove it, and they just didn't get that grade. Like, they just, instead, they had, like, their normal whatever of, like, just chickens in a silo. And then they had their other version of, like, chickens outside. Because if it's a window in a black space, the chickens...
They want to be at the window.
They will kill to be at that window. And I think about that a lot in office spaces.
I'm going to think about that forever now.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
It's horrifying.
And then, so the thing I really like is Joe... he was a firefighter.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. He started as a firefighter, and then he was in, like, a situation where he almost died. It was, like, a life or death situation, and so then he pivots so drastically into working an office job, and it leads to him, like, one of the through lines for this movie is he just has this anxiety, and so, like, he was in these life or death situations, and now he's a hypochondriac, and he's constantly convinced that he's sick. He's, like, always coughing and clearing his throat and just, like, so worried. They have a thing when he goes to the doctor's office, has been seeing the doctors and doctors and doctors and doctors. And I do love the line where when the doctor tells him that he has the brain cloud, Joe says something where he's like, oh, and so all of this was a symptom. And the doctor's like, no, aside from the brain cloud, you are 100% healthy. Like, none of the things that you think are wrong with you are wrong with you.
Yeah, where he's like, the only reason we caught it was because of your 1 million tests.
Yeah.
Which was also interesting. And then it's interesting in the way that, like, later in the movie we find out that it's all kind of a joke. Like,
yeah, there's, like, no point, because they find out at the end, the big, like, punchline is the doctor is on the rich guy's payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like...
So he was just looking for someone who was brave and miserable.
Yeah, and who had no immediate family and no connections.
Yep.
And almost, like, no ambition, because that's the thing is Joe kind of resigns himself to the office job.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wrote down that I loved is he goes on his, like, rant, and he's, like, telling the boss off, and he's, like, he, like, turns... I love in his office is that big, like, wheel that says do not touch, and he just starts turning it, and, like, nothing happens.
Yep.
At all.
Nothing
He's
happens.
like, I always wanted to know what would happen. And he has this line where he's talking about how he could have done all of the work that he's done over, like, 4.5 years in 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the thing about office jobs that you and I have complained about constantly, where, like, I can get all of my work done in, like, half a day. Mm-hmm. But then I'm stuck there. You have to just... It's... When I got that office job that you recommended me for through the temp agency, your advice to me was, do part of your work, watch an episode of TV on your phone. Do the rest of the part of your work, watch an episode of TV on your phone. And it drove me nuts because, like, going from, like, retail and customer service where you're, like, on it, you are constantly, like... I had a manager who was the if you have time to lean, you have time to clean mentality, to just, like, oh, you have to just sit on your ass for 8 hours.
Even if there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
Even if there's absolutely nothing to do. It's one of those things that when I first started getting office jobs, it, like, made me really mad. Yeah. Where I was like, why is this making more money than a server who's on their feet, taking orders, they're walking around, they're using their brain, they're having to be fast. Meanwhile, I'm purposely slowing down my work so I have stuff to do. Yeah.
No, and I learned it the hard way where I would get, like, my task done on Monday, and then I'd be like, oh, fuck, I have to be here for, like, 4 more full days.
Yeah, and you have to, like, justify being there for 4 more full days. So you have to be like, oh, this task that really would take me 2 hours, it's gonna take me 2 days.
High. Whoa, man.
And it's...
Well, and I would even go to people and I'd be like, oh, do you have anything I can work on? Do you have anything I can help you with? And they are in the same thing, so they're not going to ask for help with their thing. They're like, no, man, I also don't want to be sitting here with nothing to do.
Yeah.
Like, the best one was when they finally put me, because I was working for the school district, and they put me in a different office, and the other person who worked in that office was, like, on summer vacation. Mm-hmm. So I just had my own little space, and, like, I didn't even use my headphones. I would just watch Dimension 20 on my phone because I had nothing else to do. Yeah. And it's just a known fact. One of the things, I had been working that job for, like, a month, and the janitor came in, and I, like, kind of went to, like, pretend I was working, and she goes, oh, you don't have to pretend to be working, like, I don't care. I'm not gonna tell anyone, like, what am I gonna do, tell somebody?
Yeah, she was cool.
She was just like, yeah, don't fucking worry, like, whatever.
Like, I'm not gonna say it.
I know, it's stupid.
Yeah.
And then seeing him go on this journey, and, like, he doesn't know himself. He's in the limo, because he gets the, like, 4, like, express cards from the guy. He's like, yeah, just buy whatever you need, stay in a nice hotel, you're gonna go to Los Angeles, and then you're gonna get on a yacht, and then you're gonna go to the island. Yeah. So, like, whatever. And so he gets a limo to take him shopping, and he asks the limo driver, he's like, well, where should I go? What kind of clothes do I need to get? And the limo driver, I can't remember his name, but he just, like, pulls over the limo, and he's like, look, I get paid to drive you where you need to go. I don't get paid to tell you who you are. Yeah. And he has that thing where he's talking about, like, clothes show who you are, and, like, you need to know who you are and what kind of man you are in order to, like, do this stuff. And you see Joe kind of figure it out for the rest of the movie, where he's just like, okay, well, who am I?
Yeah. Well, like, he shows up to LA in, like, a costume almost.
He looks like, what does she say? He looks like, I don't remember, but like he does look like he's in a costume. He's got his like the dumb hat and the like khaki
He's got
shorts.
like the explorer shorts. He looks like oh man, what was that cartoon with the girl who could speak to animals?
Dora the Explorer?
No. Lives in an RV with her family, and the dad has
Oh,
massive
the
nose.
Thornberries.
Thornberries. He
Yeah.
looks like Wild Thornberries.
He does.
Like the dad in Wild Thornberries.
He like ends up leaving the hat behind because she makes fun of him, and he's like, "Oh, is this too much?" And she's like, "Well, I can't tell you."
Okay, before we move any further forward in the story, though, should we go back and talk about the rich guy just like busting into his apartment?
Right. So funny. He just shows up. He just lets himself in.
Oh my god, wait, the other thing I wanted to talk about is, like, he finally asks that girl out on a date.
Dee
Dee from The Office. He asks her out on a date. They go on a date. He's acting weird, but she's, like, kind of into it. They get back to his house. They're having fun. And then she's like, what's gotten into you? You're acting so crazy. And he's like, oh, I'm dying. And she just stops everything she's doing. She's like, that's such a bummer, and leaves.
Yeah, well, and it's like, it's that thing where she's like, I can kind of feel with her where it kind of is shitty, where he's like, oh, I'm dying. I have nothing left to lose. I'm finally going to ask this girl out. Like, he's been working there for 4.5 years and never got up the courage. And it kind of sucks to be the girl that's like, oh, well, he's dying and this is his, like, last hurrah, basically.
That's funny, because the way I read it more was, like, she is like, oh, he's dying. His sadness is contagious. It's like how I read that scene.
So because she does ask if he's contagious.
Yeah, and then he's like, no. And she's like, it's just such a bummer. And then she leaves. So I, like, read that more as, like, you and I have, again, talked about this, where you meet people who have dealt with, like, suicidal ideations and stuff, and, like, it's a different type of connection than people who haven't.
Yeah.
And this kind of felt like that moment where, like, you're with a person and you make a joke about, like, suicidal thoughts, and they're like, whoa, that's, like, so dark, man. And you're like, okay, but it's, like, what my reality is, and I think it's funny. And they're like, you can't, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like it kind of had that vibe, but it had that vibe of, like, oh, you're dying, I have to get away from you. Like, that shutdown of, like, oh, death is happening around you. I can't be near you.
Well, it's something I really liked is, and again, this kind of goes into Shanley, like, having such intentional staging and stuff, is that his apartment, the front of his apartment is gorgeous. Like, it's so warm, but he lives above a fortune teller.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, like they're going up the stairs to his apartment and there's like a fortune teller, like neon sign for that. But it's gorgeous because one of the things they were talking about is there's like the scene of the skyline and like the way they did that is they had like a cutout of the skyline and used different colored gels in the windows. So you get those different colors and it feels warm and it just feels like so pretty.
It felt lovely.
Yeah.
It felt really hopeful and like wonderful. I don't know. I thought her leaving was kind of shitty.
Yeah, I can.
Because, like, she was into him and she was enjoying the date, and as soon as he's like, yeah, I'm dying, and her reaction was, like, to shield herself from him.
Yeah.
And not necessarily to care for him.
That's fair. She's kind of freaked out the whole date, though, because he's acting so wild.
Yeah.
Like, she even mentions, she's like, you just feel more, like, alive. You seem more real. It's just that stark difference.
And then you have the rich guy coming in the next morning.
Yeah.
Because she leaves his apartment. She's like, well, I have to go. I have work.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the way she says it like, kind of hits, I think, for him, where he's like, oh, I don't have that tomorrow. Yeah, and then you have the rich guy just, like, show up the next morning and force his way into the apartment. Like, he tries to not let him in.
Yeah.
And he, like, kicks the door in, basically, and is there. He has, like, a wild Willy Wonka vibe, but, like, make him capitalistic. Like, it's weird.
And Joe's in his pajamas and, like, his bathrobe. And I think having Dee Dee leave and having Dee Dee say that thing of, like, oh, some of us have work in the morning, you see him kind of have that thing where he's like, okay, well, I quit my job. Now what do I fucking do?
Because he has no money?
Yeah,
he has no savings. Because the doctor's like, you should travel. He's like, I have no savings.
I spent all of my savings on doctors.
But I do think, this is the other thing I want to say. I do think it's kind of funny that, like, for all of his other doctor stuff, he gets second opinions, but as soon as he gets a brain cloud, he doesn't get a second opinion.
Well, because it proves that there's something wrong with him, and it's a big something wrong with him.
It's what he's kind of wanted.
Yeah.
He's wanted an out, and this is finally the out he's been begging for.
Yeah.
Even if that out is a terminal fucking illness.
Yeah. Well, and, like, the rich guy is so funny, because he just, like, yeah, he does. He barges in. He's like, oh, do you have any whiskey? And Joe's like, no. But then as soon as he's like, I want you to jump into a volcano, Joe's like, I think I have some whiskey somewhere around here.
Yeah.
And, he gives him the, like, American Express, like, whatever cards, and he's like, do it. Money is no object. Just fucking go for it. But then there's the thing where he tells his daughters, because Joe meets up with the one daughter in LA, and then the other daughter, Patricia, is the one with the boat. And they both say, like, my dad told me that I'm not allowed to ask you what you're doing. Like, I'm not allowed to ask what he's paying you for.
Yeah.
And I find it so fascinating for him to be, like, so in your face and so, like, just going up to Joe and then, like, not letting him tell anyone what he's doing. And I think it ties into him wanting someone who, like, has no immediate family and no connections to anything. He's like, this is just a guy that's gonna go missing, and I don't want anyone to question it.
Nobody question what's happening.
I really like the way that Joe kind of applies himself to this. Like, he kind of treats it as a way of finding himself, because he does put on the costumes. Like, when he's in New York with the limo driver, he puts on a tux and he checks into, like, the nicest hotel and gets himself, like, a steak dinner, because he feels like that's what he should be. That's his idea of luxury. And then when he's shopping for the trip itself, he looks like, oh, Jungle Jim. That's what she tells him. He looks like Jungle Jim, because he goes and he buys, like, he goes to, like, Banana Republic, or, like, some of the stores are named something crazy. They're like Congo something, and, like, he gets all the shirts and, like, the khaki shorts and stuff. And each of the, like, employees at the stores are really funny, because you can tell that, like, most of them just care about his money. Like, he goes in and they're like, oh, this is the best thing, and these are the most expensive. And then he goes into the luggage shop.
Yes.
And that man is so weirdly passionate about luggage. And I love his luggage is fantastic. Like, it's what saves his life multiple times, is he just has this luggage that's, like, 100%, like, watertight. It's huge. It has all these compartments. He gets all this random stuff in his luggage. And it's that difference, I think, where it's the thing that lasts the longest, because he doesn't he wears the tux, like, once. And he wears the outfit, but, like, loses pieces of it as he goes, because he's kind of embarrassed about it. But that luggage stays with him the whole time. Yeah. And it's the thing that the clerk was the most passionate about, and I feel like that's really significant.
Because he's the only person that, like, actually cared.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that I love about people in general, is, like, everybody has their weird little thing that they're like, absolutely obsessed with. Yeah. And if you don't have that weird little thing, do some soul searching. But a lot of people, when you're being your authentic self, are like, this is the thing that I fucking love. Yeah. And for that guy, it was luggage, and you felt that, like, this is my passion. And it's like, great, I love that you're passionate about luggage, because I have zero interest in it. Like, I love that you love it, because then together we make the world work, you know? Yeah, we gotta talk a little bit about, we gotta talk a lot about Meg Ryan playing all three. Wait, I'm not done with luggage yet. Okay, keep talking about luggage. What else do you think, I was trying to figure out what the luggage, like, was supposed to represent. Like, why did he buy 4? I think he just bought, like, the whole set, because it came in a set of 4. But I feel like it also represents kind of the idea of him almost packing a new life to take with himself, because you see his apartment, and his apartment is really small, and it doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. Yeah. And I feel like he's getting these suitcases with all of this stuff, and it's it's stuff that he's finding interest in. Like, he plays the golf, and he doesn't, like, super love the golf, and he's, like, has the violin bar. And I feel like it's him
kind of creating a space for himself where he can just have these things with him and decide what works and what doesn't.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
If that sounds kind of crazy or not. I
No,
don't know.
that sounds pretty legit of just, like, him giving himself space to try.
Mm-hmm. I think it also ties into him kind of figuring out who he is. And he's trying to find out, like, he's coming into himself. And I feel like that's the one thing that he really likes is the luggage. It's the thing that he got excited about because the clerk was excited about it.
Genuine living.
Genuine living.
I like that.
It's in the, like, little spotlight in the store.
Well, it's that thing of, like, you can tell when people mean it.
Yeah.
And you could become passionate about it, too. If someone else is, like, genuinely passionate about stuff, you can, like, feed off of that a little bit. Be like, wow, I really respect that you love luggage this much.
Oh, I love that the luggage is almost a character in itself, too.
Yeah.
There's a really good, I think it's Color of Magic. It's a Terry Pratchett story. Mm-hmm. And one of the characters, he's the first ever tourist. And his suitcase has little legs and, like, follows him around.
That's, like, the only Terry Pratchett book I've actually read.
Yeah. And so it makes me think of that.
Suitcase.
And it's that thing where it's, like, it's your companion. It's what you keep your things in. And it comes with you. And I feel like that's why it's important for Joe to have is it's, like, it comes with him. It's his, like, his space that he can bring with him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just love the luggage.
He used it to make a space for himself.
Yeah. I know the raft, after the yacht, like, sinks, he ties the luggage together to make his little raft. And then, like, a significant part of the movie is him on that raft in the middle of the ocean caring for Patricia, who's just, like, fully passed out for, like, that entire, like, third of the movie. Mm-hmm. But in my notes, I wrote that it was kind of like WALL-E, where she shuts down and he, like, takes care of her and, like, it just made me think of that.
I like that. I forgot about that bit.
But that bit on the raft, there's the scene that I feel like kind of makes the movie, or, like, it's the most impactful scene in the whole movie is when the moon comes up. Yes. It's like a comically huge moon. And it's just gorgeous. He's in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
And the moon comes up. And the quote he says that I really love is he says, "Dear God, whose name I don't know, thank you for my life. I forgot how big."
Yes.
And it's this really great thing where, like, he forgot how big the world is. He forgot how big life can be because he was in his tiny little office and his tiny little apartment. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, there is a whole world out there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that Shanley talked about. He didn't feel good when he worked at, like, his office jobs, but he would go somewhere that was really beautiful. Like, he would intentionally find somewhere to go that was, like, beautiful and, like, with nature, and he felt better. He wanted the story to be something where the character starts in that really terrible environment, and then as they get out into places that are more beautiful and as they experience more things, they come back to life. And that's the thing is Joe starts in, like, it feels like a coffin. It feels like a mausoleum. He starts with a death sentence. And then towards the end, he, like, is alive. He's alive. Forgot what life was like.
He's, like, in a forest towards the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of nature around him. This is, like, such a movie that is so written by, like, an artistic soul that was trapped in an office job.
Yeah. There's this quote from Shanley that I really like where the interviewer, she was like, "Oh, have you ever jumped in a volcano?" And he has this quote. He says, "Every morning when I wake up, I face the volcano and I have to choose whether to jump in or not." And he says that, like, getting out of bed is jumping into a volcano. The choice to live is a daring one and has to be made on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And that's just, that hit me where it's true. Like, every day you wake up and you have to decide whether you're going to just stay in bed or if you're going to get up and get out and, like, do things.
Yeah.
It's so impactful. And I feel like that's the thing is, like, Joe is choosing to live his life finally for, like, the first time since he stopped being a firefighter. And he stopped being a firefighter because he was afraid to die, and made that his whole thing, is he was of just being afraid of dying instead of being excited to live.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's so good.
So I'm going to get into my research now, because that's a good segue. So this was written and directed by John Patrick Shanley. He's pretty cool. He is a playwright and a screenwriter and a director. Like, his other movies are, he did Doubt. He wrote a lot of off-Broadway stuff. He did Moonstruck, that movie with Cher.
Yeah.
But he also wrote Congo, which is like this really shitty one. It's got Tim Curry in it, and he does not know where his accent is supposed to be from, and nobody else knows where his accent is supposed to be from. It's about, like, they raised a gorilla and have to go to, like, get diamonds from these, like, weird super killer gorillas. It's crazy. It's a terrible movie, but it was also written by...
Love that.
So he is kind of an interesting dude. He was born in 1950. He served in the Marine Corps. He was he got put on academic probation his freshman year at NYU. And so after being put on academic probation, he was like, okay, whatever. So he went into the Marine Corps, and he served stateside, but he served stateside during the Vietnam War. And after he got out, he used the, like, military, the GI Bill or whatever.
Yeah.
He used that to go back to school, and then started screenwriting and, like, writing stuff after getting out of school.
Oh, that's one way to do it.
And then, yeah, he was inspired to make this movie because he worked a lot of shitty jobs. One of his first jobs was an advertising librarian for a medical supply company that made, quote, terrifying medical instruments. Which is in the movie, like, It's the big thing where they make, like, an anal probe. They have the, like, count of, like, happy customers that just keeps clicking.
Yes.
Which I think is great. Intention was this, he says, it's a movie about what I saw and what I felt around me and what I found attractive and interesting to depict on screen. One of my rules of thumb was I didn't want to do anything I didn't find beautiful.
I think that's why the movie feels so stylized.
Oh, yeah.
Because each frame it kind of feels like a painting.
One of the themes he used as an inspiration when writing the script was this term, I'm not going to pronounce it correctly because it's German. It's like Weltschmerz or Weltschmerz. Wikipedia defines it as a literary concept describing the feeling experienced by an individual who believes that reality can never satisfy the expectations of the mind. So it's this kind of, like, it's a wariness or a sadness about, like, you're aware that, like, you have this feeling of, like, life is never going to be as good as I want it to be, so now I'm miserable.
The most German concept.
Right.
Of, like, you will never achieve your dreams.
Basically what he did is he wrote a spec script for this, which is, like, it's not a full, like, film script. It doesn't really talk about, like, blocking or whatever. It's kind of more narrative, but it's kind of, like, loosely script structured. Mm-hmm. He wrote a spec script, and his agent sent it to Steven Spielberg.
Oh.
And the way he says it is he was in, like, a hotel in LA, and the phone rang, and it was Steven Spielberg, and he was like, hey, I really like your movie, let's get it made. And I heard that you want to direct it. And Shanley is like, I do not recall ever saying that, but I said yes, I wanted to direct it. He was like, I don't know.
He's like, I panicked in the moment, and now I'm a director.
They started filming. They filmed in Hawaii, LA, and New York. All of the ocean scenes, I thought this was really cool. They did a lot of kind of old school film tricks. He was talking about some of the shots. He's like, it was a crane on top of a crane on top of a crane.
Oh my god.
But they shot all of the ocean stuff in, like, a big water tank at the MGM studios.
So fun.
He was really adamant about how he wanted the film to look. Mm-hmm. They spent 5 months in pre-production. And Steven Spielberg had to keep Warner Brothers from interfering with the movie.
It's a good thing that he had a big name behind him. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I think this movie would have been messed with.
Yeah, it was Spielberg and Tom Hanks also had to come in and be like, no,
Trust us.
Yeah, don't worry about it. One of the things I really like is it's so stylized, and it feels a type of way because the camera doesn't move almost at all. The camera moves around and there's some panning, but he talked about other films at the time seemed to use a lot of camera movement to keep things visually interesting. And he felt like that was kind of lazy. So whenever he could, he would just leave the camera static because he wanted what was in the frame to be interesting and not have the camera trick of wham, wham, wham to make you feel like it was interesting.
Yeah.
Another one of the big things, I keep saying that, Meg Ryan plays the 3 women characters.
Yes.
She even plays the voice of the flight attendant on the plane.
Oh, I love that.
Almost all of the, if not all of the female characters are played by Meg Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that Shanley was adamant about is he was like, this isn't a gimmick. This was a stylistic choice. This wasn't me doing a stunt casting or anything. I wanted to do this. He kind of described that character as a karma woman. She represents kind of the 3 different stages of women that you meet in the way of falling in love with someone. Is you have the idealized woman who's Dee Dee, and then you have the wild kind of interesting woman that's Angelica, and then you have Patricia who's just she's very firm in who she is. She knows what she's doing. She knows what she wants. But his intentions behind having Meg play 3 characters and having these 3 aspects of the same woman is he talks a lot about how pretty much everybody when dealing with people, but especially in romantic situations, you're kind of dealing with a person in your head that you're trying to get right, and they're trying to put together this image of someone and have it be correct. Yeah. And so having these 3 different facets of someone instead of having one person be the true love interest. And he also kind of talks about how it's representative of kind of coming up against the same problem over and over again and having to solve the problem in order to achieve that happiness and coming at it, running into it, because it's that thing where he wants to find love because he has this crush on Dee Dee, and you see it established at the very beginning, and then he tries for Dee Dee and it doesn't work. And then he kind of has something almost with Angelica, but it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then he meets Patricia, and that's when it blossoms finally.
Yeah.
Patricia as a character is really interesting to me because she is so self-assured. She knows exactly what she wants. She's only helping Joe because she wants the boat, and her dad promised the boat. She wants to just go off somewhere. She wants to go on...
Get away from the things of man.
Yeah, exactly.
Such a good line.
And they're having a conversation, and Joe asks her, he's like, do you believe in God? And she says, I believe in myself.
Yeah.
And Joe's follow-up to that is kind of hit me in a weird way for some reason, where he says I have no interest in myself. And that's the core of his problems is he doesn't have any interest in himself. He has no idea who he is. He's going on this journey, and in facing his death is when he realizes oh, okay, I have to be comfortable with myself.
I need to figure out who I am and be comfortable with that.
Yeah, and at the very end, he has this other line that I really like that he says, I'm my only hope for a hero. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of come into it where he, accepts it, kind of, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I really like that.
I love Patricia's the final person, right?
Yeah.
I really liked her line where she goes, I hate that I found out that I have a price.
Yes. That kind of conversation was really cool.
That one kind of hit where it's oof, yeah.
she's disgusted with the fact that she now knows her price. And I think that's what stands out about it, is she's like, I know that I have a price now, and now that I know that about myself, like, that has colored my self-image.
Yeah.
Because she's so independent, and her whole thing is she wants to sail away from the things of man. But now she knows, like, oh, I can be bought. I am.
And then the thing that bought her gets destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting.
Well, and it's that motif again. The, like, lightning bolt is the shape of that same zigzag that's been through the whole thing. And I feel like I'm going to sound like such a fucking pretentious dickhead. But I feel like it shows the, fractured way that people interact with the world. Where you have this, like, there's a crack, especially in Joe's apartment. I really liked it, where it was literally a crack in the wall. Yeah. Where he wants to get from his really shitty life to a life that's idealized. Like, he has that lamp. He has, the books in his office are, like, The Odyssey and Robinson Crusoe. He has this idea of a life that he wants, but he's stuck. Like, he wants a crack in the wall. He wants something to break apart his shitty life so that he can get to the other side. And I think that's when the lightning bolt breaks the boat in half, that's Patricia's version of that, where it's like, this is the thing that's her price. It's her, like, she's tied to her father. Yeah. I think it's important that it's that same motif. And the, like, that lightning bolt symbol through the entire thing is just kind of, it's foreshadowing the volcano, and that's why I think it's really important that they do get kind of yeeted out of the volcano at the end, is like, it's another break. Like, he's jumping into the volcano because someone else is making him do it. He's doing it because no one else is doing it. He's doing it because it's uncomfortable. But in the end, he's rewarded with, like, being on his luggage with the woman that he loves, on their way. Like, they have no more ties to anything. They have nothing holding them back anymore.
They're living.
They're alive.
Yeah. I do love the thing that Joe says to her. He says it to all the women, which I think is fun, where he's like, I feel like I've met you before.
Yeah, when I first met you, I felt like I had seen you somewhere before.
Yeah, I really liked that, because it is that thing of recognizing something in them.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
When it also ties into the idea of, like, the quote-unquote karma woman, where it's like you have this idealized version of in your head. Mm-hmm. And they're so close to his idealized version, but he has to, like, solve the puzzle, or, like, he has to get to himself before he can interact with, like, the woman that he's been imagining in his head this whole time.
Yes. You gotta figure out who you are and how to be comfortable with yourself.
Exactly.
To quote RuPaul, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anybody else?
Can I get an amen? I have complicated thoughts about that quote, but that's a whole other conversation.
Me too. And RuPaul in general, but that is a whole other
that's a whole other topic. Thing. Yeah, they made this movie. The distribution, so it opened in, like, a little over 1,000 theaters.
Oh,
like, it had
that's actually more of a release than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it was kind of like a mid. It grossed $9.2 million opening weekend. It was actually number 2 behind Hunt for Red October, so, like, it did well.
Oh.
The problem is, like, so it basically broke even. It got a mid release. It broke even financially. The problem is, like, it was billed as a comedy.
What?
And so people were like, Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks in this wacky, silly comedy. And then it's not that.
It's not that.
In another article that I really liked, when they were talking to Shanley and they were talking about this, he says, he's like, that's life. Some things are funny and some aren't. And one of the things I was doing was writing a story about a guy who'd been traumatized. What does he say? He's like, he's working in this drab place under oppressive lighting, and when he realizes he's going to die, color comes back into his life. And that's the goal. He wasn't writing it to be funny. He was writing it to be like, no, you need to, like, accept your life and come into yourself. It had mixed reviews, like, on Rotten Tomatoes. It has, like, a 63% from critics, but, like, a 50% from the audience.
Oh.
So I think a lot of it, and again, not to sound like a pretentious dickhead, but I think a lot of it comes from like critics look at different things and critics have like a more in-depth understanding of movies than like just your average moviegoer.
Right.
And so I think that's what led into it, because some people thought it was like too goofy, some people thought it was too weird, other people thought it was like too existentialist and it didn't fit in the thing.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I could see this being, because it is kind of like heady.
Yeah.
Like it's a little philosophical for like your average, I think, audience member to like really like grab onto it in a way. Like it feels really like they would show this at Dreamland.
Yeah.
Yeah. More so than they would show this, like do a re-showing at Doco or something.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it too is this was kind of the tail end of like the height of like Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. Like it was, when you hear Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, you're expecting a very certain vibe. Like you've got mail, like whatever the other ones that they're in.
Give me more.
I want to say Sleepless in Seattle, but that could be somebody else.
Sure.
But no, they're used to like very like rom-com.
Yeah.
And so this was not that. And I feel like this movie had a lot of weird things going against it, and that like people were expecting a comedy because of Tom Hanks, and then they were expecting like romantic comedy because of Meg Ryan. And even the millionaire guy is like a comedic actor.
Oh yeah.
And so people were like, why isn't it funny? You even have Nathan Lane as like the leader of the
yes,
the natives,
the weird tribe that's
the
like a
Waponi Woo.
Yeah,
I love the weird exposition dump where Patricia literally like pulls a book out and explains that like the tribe is, what is it? It's like a mix of
Israeli and
Polynesian, Jewish, Scandinavian, I think.
Scandinavian might have been and their like ship had gotten lost or something silly.
And they have like an obsession with orange soda.
I actually quite liked the tribe a lot.
Well, the costuming was funny because they were obsessed with the orange soda, and you could see like their necklaces were made out of like the crushed cans and stuff.
And you could see like a weird clash of all the cultures.
Yeah. Which
was fun. It was a fun way to like have a small tribe on an island that didn't feel like you were punching down. Because I was like, they started mentioning the tribal people, and I was like, this could get racist. Mm-hmm. And instead you're like, okay, that was like a weird workaround, but it like worked. It didn't come off as like crazy offensive. It came off as like, this was a whoopsie tribe, and it's got its own unique culture, and it's not Polynesian, and it's not this other thing, and it's something else in the middle, and you've just got to like run with something. Some
of the stories that like Shanley, I highly recommend. I'll put them in the resources doc, but Shanley is a really good interviewee. Like he is well spoken, and he has this really interesting point of view. I like where he's coming from. One of the ones that was crazy is one of the interviewers. I read a bunch like the same day. But he got asked, like, did you ever jump into an active volcano? And he talks about, like, he grew up somewhere that was really rough. He's had life-threatening experiences. He just casually drops this fucking wild. He's like, yeah, when I was a kid, 2 guys hung me by my feet off a 5-story building and threatened to let me go. Hello?
Why? What? Who?
And then he was in the Marine Corps working with like explosives because he was a tank man and a flamethrower gunner.
Oh.
So like
you see that of bad chemicals in there.
Yeah, you kind of see that he's got like this weird.
Talk about a trauma response. He wrote that in.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I really like is Joe started as he almost did the reverse of what Shanley did, where Joe started as a firefighter and then went into the office drone environment. The fact that the office that Joe works in is an exact replica of the one that Shanley worked in and was like for a company very similar, like he says in the drawer of his desk were a set of the discontinued artificial testicles that the company made.
Oh my god.
And the interviewer's like, why were they discontinued? And he just goes, 'cause they clicked. that's why I think it's so funny that his Joe's boss has the trophy with the artificial testicles.
What a wild company to work for.
Well, and then going back to kind of like the ending where they get thrown out of the volcano, the luggage pops up, they turn it into a raft again. Apparently, so they shot an alternate ending where, because the yachts were the Tweedledee and the Tweedledum, and so they shot an alternate ending where the dad shows up on the other yacht and kind of, because he showed up to see what happened. He wanted to make sure that Joe jumped into the volcano and stuff. Shanley didn't like it because it felt too explanatory. He didn't like the idea of the guy coming and being like, oh, yes, I told my doctor to tell you, and I'm here just to make sure that you actually jumped into the volcano.
Yeah.
And I like that they didn't go with that. I like that they kept it kind of open-ended, and they have Patricia being like, that doctor is on my father's payroll.
Yeah.
And her thing where she's like, you didn't get a second opinion? He has the thing where he finds out he doesn't have the brain cloud, and he like coughs and he's like, no, I'm sick, I'm always gonna be sick. And she's like, stop it.
Yeah.
You're fine.
And because he's like, because you see him doubting himself, and then he comes right back, and he's not sick anymore. Mm-hmm. But also, like, that lecture he got from his boss when he's like, I don't feel well. And his boss is like, well, I don't feel well either, but I still show up to work every day.
Yeah, he has a quote.
That felt crazy.
He says, nobody feels good. After childhood, it's a fact of life.
Yeah.
And I hate it. It sucks.
It feels icky, but it's like, that boss is the character that's like, an office job is a good job. You have to have an office job because that means you're a good person because you have a good job. Even if you're doing literally nothing all day and it's killing you slowly. Mm-hmm. Like, man, that character just like hit me in a way where I was like, I fucking know this guy and I hate him.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know.
Yeah, but I did love the ending where the realization of her... I like that Patricia was the one.
Yeah.
To say it.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I think the other ending would have really felt way too on the nose.
Well, I feel like it would have... I
think it like helped the dad have this weird, elusive mystery air as well. If he had showed up, I think he would have read as like much more greedy and less just like a crazy rich guy who's trying to get more money.
If it had been that other ending, I feel like the reviews would have flip-flopped where critics wouldn't like it, but audiences would. Because it seems like a cop-out. It seems like at the end they're like, oh, don't worry, ha-ha, there's the punchline instead of it.
Exposition dump.
Yeah, I feel like it would be exposition versus existentialism.
Yeah.
Where, like, instead of having someone come in and explain everything, as opposed to them kind of having this, like, wait, what? Sort of moment at the end. Like, the wait, what are we going to do now?
Yeah. Oh man, we should talk about her jumping in the volcano with him.
Yeah.
Like the wedding scene where she's like, "You're just gonna marry me. You're gonna marry me. And you're gonna jump in." And then she's like, "Yeah, now that we're married, I'm gonna jump in with you." And like,
yeah.
I thought that was just really fun, and it helped for me. It helped her seem as dedicated to the relationship as he felt.
Yeah, he felt dedicated, and she was right there with him. She says, "We'll jump and we'll see. That's life."
Yeah.
And I like that because she is like almost tricking him. She's like, okay, I won't jump. Just marry me. And then she's like, we're married now, bitch. We're jumping until death.
Yeah.
She's such a cool character because she's the final piece in Joe really coming out of his shell, because Dee Dee is his like office drone. Like he feels like he's not going anywhere. Angelica is like crazy. I feel like that's the stage where you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna do whatever. And what does she call herself? She's a flibbertigibbet.
Yes.
And she, by the end of their interaction, he kind of gives her the inspiration to follow her own passions, because she just is like a party girl. She doesn't like her life. She has her weird poems that she writes, and he's like, well, you should do that. You should write your poems, and you don't like being under your father's thumb.
Leave.
Yeah, get out of here.
Like the fact that she had a plan when she's like, I wish I could just do X, Y, and Z, and he's like, do it.
Yeah.
So good.
And that's his transition into like going from, well, I wish I could get out. I wish I don't like where I am. And at the end he tells her like, well, get out. And that's his way of being like, oh, like, I'm out. I'm on this next part of the journey. And that's when he meets Patricia, who is, like, his next step of, like, finding that self-assuredness.
Yeah.
One of my other fun facts. So there's the scene after he gets his diagnosis and he walks out of the doctor's office. And it's that really long, it's the crane shot going down from the top of the building. And it stays on the front of the building as he comes out of the doctor's office.
Oh, yeah, with the dog.
And that's the thing, is that shot is so great. He almost didn't get that shot that way. Like, he intentionally, Shanley intentionally shot that scene with no coverage. And so in filmmaking, coverage is like, you have your scene, you get it from, like, as many angles as possible so you can cut to different things.
Okay.
So he intentionally shot that with no coverage. He was like, this is the shot I want.
Oh my
Fuck
God.
you, Warner Brothers. This is the shot. And so that was the thing, is, like, Steven Spielberg even was like, you did that on purpose, didn't you? And he's like, I'll never tell, except yes, I absolutely did do it on purpose. And it's such a good shot because, like, it would make the movie very different, because he comes out and he just stands there after getting his, like, death sentence.
And it feels super disorienting.
Yeah.
Like, the shot itself is disorienting.
And this woman comes by with her huge dog.
Mm-hmm.
And he, like, gets down to pet the dog and, like, hugs the dog. And then gets up and, like, hugs the woman.
Yeah.
And I feel like the energy of the shot would be so different if it had cut to, like, a close-up of him interacting with the dog and, like, a close-up of him with the woman. If there was any dialogue, it would feel different. And I like that it's disorienting. I like that it's really isolating, and it feels desolate. Like,
yes,
you're so far away. Like, you're from, like, across the street, basically.
Yeah.
And it just feels so, like,
but it feels
lonely, but I don't know.
It feels lonely, and it feels like his, like, I gotta connect to people now.
Yeah.
Moment of, like,
yeah.
I gotta do it now. And so him just, like, immediately reaching out to the dog, which is way easier to, like, interact with the dog before you interact with the owner most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, interacting with the dog and then being like, and there's a person here, let me interact with the person. And, like, it's his reaching out to humanity is what that felt like to me.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's Shanley being so intentional and knowing exactly what he wants on the screen. And, like, I really appreciate the fact that he chose to move the camera as little as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So
which is why that scene feels, I think, really disorienting, because the camera's moving.
Yeah.
With, like, nobody in shot for most of that.
It just moves down the building, and then as soon as the people are in shot, it stops moving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really good. And then, like, the way he uses color, like, the office is so, like,
it's like the blue-gray scale.
Yeah, it's like
a weird
blue,
green in there, too.
Yeah, it just feels gross.
It feels sickly.
Yeah.
The whole thing feels really sickly, that office. Yeah.
And there's just, like, I don't know, the one bright spot of color is that flower on the pathway up to the thing that gets, like, stomped on. And when Joe comes back from his lunch break, where he had to go to the doctor, which is another thing of, like, having to take your lunch break to go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And, like,
It's
when
very
you work,
American. It's very American.
Yeah, well, and when you work office jobs, the only time anything is open is when you're at work. So all of your errands have to be done
on your lunch break. And so you're exhausted for the second half of the day because you had to go do all the little things that you need to do that you won't be able to do after work.
Yeah.
Because after work, you gotta go pick up your kids or walk your dog or do whatever because they've been home alone for too long.
Yeah, you have to eat your sandwich with one hand, go grocery shopping, go to the bank.
Yeah, all the little things, pick up the dry cleaning, like,
well, and that's what starts the fight with his boss, is he took, like, a 2-hour lunch break. Mm-hmm. And I think because he got the death sentence is why he was like, there's no point in me rushing back because I'm dying. And so he goes back and he, like, makes the flowers stand up, and he has these 2 shots really stand out where he's just gotten his death sentence and he's getting ready to go back into his job, and he stands with his arms wide out and, like, looking up at the sky, And the only other time we see him, like, doing that pose is when he's in front of the moon. Yeah. And it's just this sort of thing where he's, like, opening himself up to the universe, and it's two very different moods, where it's kind of the, like, why, God? And then the, like, thank you, God.
Yeah.
Kind of vibes.
Yeah. It's so cool.
It's such a good movie.
It's a really cool movie. It's a really cool movie.
Do you have any, like, final thoughts or questions?
No, I really like the movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peek behind the screen, I left my notebook at home, so I don't have any final quotes because I left them all in the notebook over there.
I will give quotes then.
Okay.
So, yeah, we've talked about most of them. I really like, there's the one where the first shot of the movie is him getting out of his car. And
dude, that opening scene is so fucking good.
Yeah.
And so good, and it sets the vibe so perfect for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, well, it starts with him just stepping directly in a puddle and, like, his shoe breaking. And so...
Oh, yeah, that was a note I wrote. It was the sole of his shoe that broke.
Mm-hmm.
But right before he enters and I was like, that shit do be soul crushing.
Yeah, well, and he even tells Dee Dee, he's like, I'm losing my soul, as he's, like, holding his broken fucking shoe.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really know what to say to it. She's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's this quote from It's Vague Visages, or, like, it's writing about, it's kind of an analysis about the movie. But it's this quote where he's talking, and the author says, the process of extrication from the rhythm of, like, being stuck in a rut, it's the process of getting out of that rut is the beating heart of the movie. Realizing that you've allowed fear to beat down your ambitions and govern your life. And so, like, kind of mustering up the courage to act against that. Like, the through line, the whole, like, thesis of the movie is, like, coming back to life and having the courage, like, the courage that it takes to recognize where you're at in your life and whether or not you like where you're at.
And then acting upon that. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I will say this, to apply it to real life. I do have, like, a friend who's worked the same job since graduating college, which is kind of crazy, and he's never really loved the job. It pays him well. He bought a house before he was 30, like, because the job is good. And I remember talking to him once, and he's like, the job's fine. He's like, it's really boring, but it pays me a lot of money. He's like, I don't particularly like it. He's like, it's not really what I wanted to do with my life, but he's like, it's so comfortable because I know how to do it. I can just show up and do the bare minimum, and then have the rest of my life. And he has all these, like, wants and dreams, but he's so fearful of losing what he has that he won't move.
Yeah.
Like, since getting this job, he's never really been stoked on it. Mm-hmm. And he just won't budge because he's succeeded in a classical sense.
Yeah.
And is like, this is fine.
Yeah, it's establishing an arbitrary checklist of, like, what makes you successful, and then when you've, like, hit the end of that checklist, it's like, well, what now?
Yeah, it's like, who you hit the end of that checklist, and it's like, okay, well, who are you now?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember which website hosts it, but there's this series by this one, like, writer called Unloved, and they go through and talk about movies that, like, didn't get enough credit, and they get to, like, interview. So this person is interviewing Shanley, and it's a long quote, so this will be, like, the last one for me. But Shanley says, almost all of us are in denial about death. And the weird thing is, you think they do that because if you were to worry about death, you couldn't enjoy your life. But I think the reverse is true. If you don't recognize your mortality, you're tiptoeing through life and not letting in the full reality of what it is. When Joe lets that in, that's when life comes flooding in. And so it's, recognizing it's the doing things because you're afraid to die, like, derogatory versus positive.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're afraid to die, you're going to be careful, but you should recognize, like, well, I'm afraid to die, but that shouldn't stop me.
Well, it's not even, like, you only have so much time. Mm-hmm. Like, on this earth, whatever. Use it to try.
Yeah.
Use it to just try.
Yeah.
And if you fail, great. You learn that wasn't the thing for you. Try something else.
Yeah.
Because all you got is time.
And you need to just like, risk is good. This is coming from me, who is the most commitment and risk aversive human on earth.
Yep.
It's important, and you should be doing it, and it is scary, and it sucks, but you're not living to your full potential unless you, like, get out and do something. There's a really good, it's like an internet post, but they're talking about, like, if you're scared to do something, do it scared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you're scared to do something, you can still be scared, but you shouldn't let that stop you. Just do it scared.
Yeah. What I have been discovering in my life is that it is important to just try. If you have a mild interest in something, peek into it. Mm-hmm. It might be like WWE. I watched one episode and went, this is my new personality now. You never know.
Yeah.
But it is that thing of just like, let yourself try new stuff. Let yourself have a new interest and try for it.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it, you can leave.
But like, if it sucks, hit the bricks.
But you just try. All you have is time to try.
Yeah.
So try. Bet on yourself. For like once in your fucking life, bet on yourself.
Yeah, I would say it's like the introduction of curiosity is like, if you fail at something, if you decide, like, okay, whatever, that's fine. But if you fail at something and you get, like, you feel emotional about it, it's like your next step is, well, what don't I like about it? Why did it fail this time? Like, what am I not doing? And then it becomes a journey.
Yes. I do love curiosity. I love if we're talking about online phrases, stay curious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, curiosity is so important in living a full and wonderful life. Let yourself wonder. Let your mind go.
Well, and you see that in Joe versus the Volcano, because, like, the only one in that office who is curious about anything is Joe, and you can see it in that he, like, is reading books about adventure, and he has his little lamp. He's curious about things, and he doesn't like where he's at, but he's actively, even, like, in his imagination, trying to not be there.
Yeah. It's a good movie.
It's a good movie.
If you're feeling lost, watch this movie. If you're feeling like you need a little push of encouragement, watch this movie.
If you feel like seeing Tom Hanks with a cute little 90s mullet,
watch this movie. It's very fun.
So, yeah, that's us talking about Joe versus the Volcano.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
Wait, your rating.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. I give it a 4 out of 5.
I think I also give it 4 out of 5. I quite liked it. I really would like to watch it again, and I would love to watch it with, like, someone else who doesn't normally watch weird films. I mean, this would be a really good intro film to be like, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's definitely a baby step from, like, quote-unquote normal movies.
Yeah.
Because you're getting into, like... And I think that's why people didn't really like it, is it's, like, just kind of sideways. It's, like, left of what people are most... like,
left
expecting.
Of normal.
Yeah.
Because it makes you, like, think and question yourself.
Yeah.
In a way that's not normal.
So, yeah, 4 out of 5 for me.
Same.
Solid flick. Gorgeous flick.
Gorgeous.
Really good vibes.
Great vibes.
Just great movie.
What are we watching next?
So our next movie is going to be Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, yeah.
We're taking another swing. I feel like we're doing very up and down emotionally wise. Like...
Yeah.
We're bringing you up, we're bringing you back down. We're bringing you up.
I feel like the swings are getting wider and wider as we go. But yeah, Jojo Rabbit's next.
Yeah, so...
it'll be a little bit of a history lesson. I already have a lot to say on it, but I think it's gonna hit at a weird time by the time the episode drops.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be, like, politically a weird time, and politically... oh, well, it'll be weird, but it'll be something, and it'll be something worth talking about. History's always worth talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So that's our next movie is Jojo Rabbit. Follow us on Instagram, OK_but listen. Rate and review us. Mm-hmm. Comment on our posts. Just let us know.
Let us know you're here.
Even if you want to just drop an emoji.
Yeah. Drop your favorite emoji.
Yeah, there we go.
Or your least favorite. Drop your favorite and least favorite emoji.
There we go.
I'd be curious to see.
And yeah, so go watch Jojo Rabbit. Or don't. I'm not your dad. Bye.